Mr. Chairman, you can start when you need to.
Yeah, recording, 7 o'clock. All right, thanks very much. All right, so welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting for April 1st, 2020. We're doing this meeting remote, as was promoted on the agenda. As a reminder to all participants in the audience, this is an open meeting and portions can be recorded and rebroadcast on WRPS, which looks like will be happening. So we appreciate WRPS chipping in and helping us out with that. Meeting notes will also be available and posted town clerk's office and online. So for the agenda tonight, we have a couple of basic things. First thing is we have Rockland Public Schools. And then we also have the South Shore Voc-Tech schools. I just want to run down and quickly check. I'm not going to call everyone's name. I'm just looking for folks that are part of the Finance Committee and then our presenters. I know Dr. Cron is on. Thank you, Dr. Cron. Lori, I see you. Joe, I saw you earlier.
Hello.
Is Ken Tachi out there?
I doubt it.
Okay. How about Craig?
I'm here.
All right, Craig, thanks. And how about Julie? Okay.
She's here. She's having mic trouble.
Julie, are you on like a video? Can you wave? All right. Looks like we got Dan.
Great.
Who else is out there? Jeff?
Yep, I'm here, John.
Hey, Jeff, how are you? Thanks.
Good, how are you?
How about Bill Stewart?
He's connecting to audio.
Okay. How about Bill Principe? Okay.
Bill Principe is signed in, but he's muted.
Signed in but muted. Okay.
Mhm.
Who else do we have?
Here's Bobby.
Bobby is Bobby's not going to make it tonight. He's not feeling well.
Oh,
All right. Anyone else from the Finance Committee that's here? Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We said Bill Stewart is signed in, and everybody can see that.
I can't
Not
see
Bill
it.
Stewart, just signed in.
There you go.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And then Bill Principe, you said is signed in as well.
If you scroll down on the right-hand side, you can see people who are logged in.
Yeah, I'm on Dr. Cron's site. So
Oh, I see William Principe logged
Okay.
in, but he's muted.
okay. And we've got Julie. So we have a quorum, so that's good. And, you know, with that in the interest, you know, in addition on the agenda to the public schools, after we finish the presentations and any conversation and questions that we have for the schools, they can drop off and then we can go through the budget. We have Liz is on the phone, or Biz is on the phone from the town accountant's office. She'll go through kind of where we stand with the budget. We'll take final votes. You know, I don't know, Biz, are you able to, you know, kind of walk us through what's missing and what needs to be voted on?
I believe at this point in time, the only thing that needs to be voted on are the school budgets.
Right.
To the best of my knowledge, everything else is voted at your prior meeting. And then we also have to do the capital projects, which were already voted by the capital committee. So we should be able to run through it pretty quickly.
All right, so we'll cover that as we get to it. And then in addition, did Doug make it on, or is Doug?
Doug is on.
I'm here. Yep.
All right, Doug.
I'm fine, thanks.
All right, great. So with that, I think we've got a full docket. We've got a good group here assembled. Dr. Cron and your staff, I appreciate you all attending. We do appreciate everything. I did roll through your presentation. And just, I like to say that, you know, we're very impressed with everything that's been going on with the schools. I know my daughter, my wife, et cetera, just great advances, lots of things going on at the schools. So super positive feedback on the schools. Excited to
Thank you.
hear about, how we're going to get into fiscal year 2021. We know these trying times are ahead of us, but we're confident in the people that we have on this call, especially, that are going to help us get through it. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank the members of the Finance Committee. I know this is, you don't get a paycheck for this, and we appreciate your dedication to the town. I'd also like to thank Doug and Biz. They've been great to work with over the past few weeks. We're all finding our way through these very trying times and doing the best that we can. That said, I'm going to move along and present my budget. I'll keep my comments to a bare minimum and take questions at the end, please. Oh, I just screwed that up. Okay, I'm back. Here we go. So my presentation, I will give you a basic budget landscape and some of our needs and some of our compliance issues. I will give you the basic preliminary budget numbers, including salaries, including new positions, annual expenses, special education, our FY21 appropriation.
Doug, you lose your.
I want to give you,
Yeah,
I want to give you
you
a,
don't have your screen at this point.
Your
You don't
budget
have
screen
my-
disappeared.
can you
We lost-
see a slide?
lost
No,
your
we
slide.
can see you.
Only you, not your slides.
I had you on my phone and your slide on my computer.
There.
How about now? Are
Yep.
you back?
Yep,
Okay,
that's it.
skip right to here.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Okay. Okay, I want to give you a little background. We have been actively over the past year and a half since Jane joined us, working hard to make our budget as transparent as possible and also align with DESI's chart of accounts and Munis.
Mhm.
So a lot of time and work has been put into some realignment restructuring efforts, including specifically targeted budgeted specific revolving accounts to specific salary and expense line items. We've audited and reallocated SPED and general ed salaries. We've broken out reoccurring personnel and one-time salary costs, for example, coaches. We have audited and reallocated expenses, and we are moving closer and closer to a building-based budget format. All of this being done in line with DESI's chart of accounts and Munis. A little bit of background about the 2019 Act relative to educational opportunity for students. This requires, as you know, among other things, school districts to submit a formal 3-year plan that was supposed to be due today. That date has been pushed off. We don't know when that's going to be due, but included in that plan, I must specify for the state the relationship between the allocation of funds and educational needs of English learners and low-income students specifically, and that's quoted right out of the document, right out of the state documents. We must also include, quote, a description of evidence-based programs, supports, and interventions that the school district will implement to address persistent disparities in achievement among student subgroups. The reason I highlight these two aspects of the Act is that Rockland is a poster child for this Act. That's why our Chapter 70 increase was so big this year, approximately 1.6 million. Our English language learners population has continued to grow, which I will talk about briefly in a minute. And the average poverty level has risen slightly in the district as well. Our response to the governor's plan is the following. We are planning to be a fully one-to-one district, K-12 next year. This includes the purchasing of nearly 600 more devices, but we want to go one-to-one. We're going to start in 5th grade. Every 5th grader and 6th grader will have their own device that will be kept in school. Grades 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 will take the computers home with them. We list this as our #1 response because when equity issues are brought up, one way we can improve our equity situation is to provide technology to all students district-wide. So we're very excited about this initiative. We've been working closely with Colleen Forlizzi and Tim Wells, and we're very excited about this for next year. We need to add an additional technology support person to make that happen. We plan to add additional English language learner and special education support personnel, and in a moment you'll see why. We are purchasing new middle school and elementary math curriculum. That's something we've been working on for about a year now in subcommittee. Targeted curriculum support personnel and programs, and strategic professional development. One of the things the district has taken very seriously over the past few years is professional development. Everything that we implement includes professional development for our staff. We feel investing in our teachers and our staff will pay dividends in the long run. I want to tell you a little bit about our English language learner population and how it's changing. Our EL population continued to grow last year. Currently, there are 184 active ELL students. If you count former English language learners, that's kids who have tested out, that would be 220 students. Testing data, including MCAS, show that our EL students are scoring significantly lower than their non-ELL classmates. I want to point out enrollment by school, where what you really need to think about is on Memorial Park. I'm a school with 292 students, when all of a sudden 46 of those 292 students do not speak English. This is a challenge on the classroom level, it's a challenge on the services level. It's a challenge all around. Our teachers are doing an extraordinary job. We have an English language learner teacher in every building. They're doing an extraordinary job. Linda Maniglia is coordinating everything. But as you can see, we have quite a substantial challenge. When I came here in 2012, we had approximately 24 English language students in the entire district. So that's how fast our change has happened. It's not just English language learners, it's also high needs students. This is a chart, this is a slide that shows you the growth of percentage of students where their first language is not English, the English language learners, students with disabilities, high needs, and economically disadvantaged. And this is just showing you the trend. That's why I put this slide together. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you can see that our high needs students continue to grow, as do our economically disadvantaged, along with English language learner and first language not being English. Further context, the high school has experienced significant increase in a percentage of high needs students. A student is considered high needs if they are any one of these four things: economically disadvantaged, English language learner, former ELL, individual education plan, or an IEP. Currently at the high school, 39.6% of our students are considered high needs, and district-wide we are at 45.3%. So again, I'm just sharing this with you because who our kids are dictates how much it costs to educate our kids, and all of this context is important for you to know. Our changing demographics at the high school, this is just to show you how real this is at the high school level. Over the past 2 years, the state percentage, the growth for high needs, the growth percentage has been 5.3%. At Rockland High School, it's been 35.1% over the past 2 years, and district-wide at just under 13%. So with some background, that leads me right into our budget numbers. I'm going to tell you our total request. The way this is laid out is left to right. This is our FY20 total budget, our FY21 total budget, FY21 town meeting request, FY21 grants, FY21 circuit breaker and prepay, and our FY20 revolving. So these are our sources of income. So for the budget total request, this is going to be adjusted by about $20,000, but this is the number that the school committee has voted on, so it's the number that I'm presenting tonight. Our FY total budget request is $30,761,694.58. Salaries make up nearly 70% of that. Our town meeting request, salaries 1 is standard salaries, weekly salaries. Salary 2 is like coaches and stipends and extracurricular activities. Our total town meeting request for salaries is $22,289,335. Annual expenses are pretty consistent from last year to this year, pretty flat. We've saved some money in transportation. Our total town meeting request for annual expenses is $465,334. Down here, you'll notice some new expenses. There's some elementary math curriculum. And again, I mentioned this elementary and middle school math curriculum that's desperately needed. And we've been working on committee for about 1.5 years on this right now. And we have a textbook chosen and a curriculum chosen, and we're pretty far down the road on that. Special education, our total town meeting request for special education is $1,725,670.58. These are compliance positions that we intend to add for next year. We intend to add an English language para in, so we have one in all 4 of our buildings, in all 5 of our buildings. We had to hire one for Memorial Park. As you noticed, we're up to over 60 EL students in that building this year. So we added that EL para already, but we plan to add one in each of the other 4 schools. A technician for technology to handle the one-to-one implementation, and then SPED and EL staff that is to be determined, leaving us a total budgeted amount for compliance positions of $469,000. Again, our total request for town meeting is $26,949,039, and that is my entire presentation. Would anyone like me to go back to any slides, or would you like me to clear this so that we can see faces and stuff? Any questions? Anyone still awake?
Yeah. So Dr. Cron, one of the things you mentioned was under high needs was financial, children that are under, they have financial pressures at home in terms of, supporting themselves. How does that put pressure on the schools? Like, how does that make them a high need category other than, they don't have money?
Yeah, well, they're coming from homes with less means, so the state uses that as a the number one correlation statistically in education between educational achievement and family data is income. So they put a lot of emphasis and a lot of weight behind the family income and how that correlates with student achievement. So low income tends to be more expensive to educate, there's a higher chance that there's special needs. And that's where that correlation comes into place. I don't know if that's helpful. But it is.
Go ahead.
No, but it is the number one. If you're just looking at statistics, it's your number one measurement stick for how student achievement.
Okay. So are we saying that different methods of educating them have to be employed to kind of compensate for the fact that maybe they've missed out on having technology and things like that at their disposal?
Yeah, I mean, there tends to be single parent. I'm generalizing, but I'm just trying to describe a typical family that we're talking about is probably a single parent household. Maybe mom or dad is working 2 jobs and student is on his or her own. Maybe they have financial troubles and their bills aren't paid some months and they don't have electricity and they find it difficult to do homework. I think in general, financial stability has a lot to say about how happy a family is and how easy it is to live in that family day to day. So we just think about it on that level. They just have a lot more challenges if they're financially challenged.
One of the things you mentioned was the purchase of Chromebooks.
Yes.
I don't see anything in the articles for that. Is that built into your budget to buy those Chromebooks, or are you getting a grant for that, or is that next year?
We're using part of the $100,000 that the town generously gives to us each year for technology. So part of that will be dedicated to this Chromebook endeavor. We're looking at, I believe, at about $60,000 to fund the first year of it.
Okay, so it's going to be a staged approach where you get there over a certain number of years.
No, we're going to hit the ground running. Every kid's going to have a Chromebook in their hand in September.
Nice.
Any other questions from anybody on the group regarding the budget?
I just had one quick one. It looked like you're moving some money out of the reserve. Is that the second year we're doing that? Are we funding that, filling that hole back in, or are we continuing to borrow from?
Are you talking about our revolving funds?
Yes, the revolving.
Yeah,
account.
we're trying to lift off the gas pedal on our use of revolving funds. But our revolving funds are healthy right now. We're spending them as we have to. We're very concerned about what the future is going to bring. So those revolving funds could disappear very, very quickly, depending on who moves into town next month. Depending on, we just don't know what life's going to look like in 2 weeks. So philosophically, we are trying to keep those revolving funds as robust as possible, but we're trying to decrease our dependence on them, because last year we spent a tremendous amount of our revolving funds to fund this current school year. Jane,
Okay.
do you have anything you want to add on that?
Yes, this current year we're slated to use approximately 3.5 million.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's combined with grants and revolving, and next year we're looking at using revolving at approximately 3.5, I believe, as well. What's different, though it's somewhat stable, it's still going up, is that they're specifically targeted at the beginning of the year towards certain lines, and we tried to do that with the expense line items and the salary line items to show where we're planning on spending them at the outset.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions on the budget itself, can we look at some of your articles that you have set up there? I don't know if you're prepared to, do you have it's okay if you don't have a slide on them. I have them here.
I don't. Jane, do you have the articles in front of you?
I do.
You want to read the articles?
Would you like me to read the articles, or?
I have the summary and the dollar amount. I can read them off, and then you can walk me through any background on them. How's that work?
Sure.
Okay.
Perfect.
So the computer and technology upgrades are 100,000. We've talked about that every year for several years.
Every year.
I think we're on board with that one.
And just so you know, I apologize. Sorry to interrupt, John. We have Tim Wells with us as well tonight. He always comes to the finance committee meetings and explains a little bit about how we spend that $100,000. We take that very seriously, and Tim takes great care with that money. I don't know if anyone has any questions specifically about how that $100,000 is spent.
Hey, before you do that, hang on one second, Tim. I think it's Bob from WRPS or Gino. We've got a lot of feedback coming from, getting a lot of echo. Do you know which units?
People need to turn off their mics if you're not using it.
Yeah, if you're not using your mic, mute your microphone. Then when you ask a question, you can unmute your microphone.
That's better. No, it isn't.
I think it's something that when Julie tried to dial in. And, sorry, so she's getting feedback on her end.
Sounds better
Okay.
now.
Okay. So the articles.
All right, Tim, you want to go through that? You have to come off mute.
Tim, is there anything you want to tell us about the $100,000? I know normally you have a handout that you give everyone. Is there anything special last year with Chromebook or replacements, or was it pretty much a 60-40? What was the division between upgrading technology and purchasing new technology, for example?
Well, purchasing new technology was about 60-40, almost specifically with Chromebooks. We targeted specific teachers at the end of last year to go around, do a quick brief one-to-one interview with them and just ask how their technology was going. And if they said it was going good, then we moved on to the next one. If somebody said their personal laptop or their school laptop was giving them issues, then we marked them down and they got an upgrade immediately. Subsequently, throughout the year, we get responses from people saying, hey, it's degrading a little bit more. So instead of purchasing a whole brand new laptop, we decided to go a different route. We would buy upgraded hard drives and RAM. So we upgraded the hard drives from a conventional hard drive to an SSD drive, which greatly improved the performance of those machines. It buys us a year or two, maybe 3. Hopefully we don't have to use them for 3 more years, but it buys us time and it keeps us within the framework of the $100,000 and what it was meant for.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim, are you doing anything with software, especially like to close that gap with the English language learners so that we've got, or is that more of a curriculum-based school?
I believe that's more PPS, curriculum-based per
Yeah.
school. Yes.
Yeah,
So
we have
no, to answer your
specific-
question, John, no, I'm not.
Much of that is paid for through grants, but we do have specific software that we use, Lexia Pro, with our English language learners, and some other software that we use specifically with special education students.
The next article up I have is lease multifunction activity bus for 7705.
Yep. So one of the things I've talked about in the past 2 budget presentations has been some of the savings we've achieved through our creative transportation systems. One of those is renting this van, which is used from everything from the golf team to it's used for a million different things. So rather than renting a bus or renting a van each time, we have a unit, and it's worked out really well. We use it during the school day as well. Jane, are we using it for our work, our Joanne White students or not? I can't remember.
You're gonna need to unmute.
Oh, you have to unmute, Jane.
Sorry, yes, we are. We use it to bring students to on-site work assignments, such as at the 99 or the grocery store, and from one of our SPED classes, so that they get actual job training, and we don't have to pay to do that transportation because we have this available to us.
And the beauty of that particular vehicle is it can be driven by someone with just a driver's license.
Right, you do not need a 7D driver's license to drive the activity van.
Yeah. Anyway, that's probably way more than you wanted to know about that activity van. Oh, John, you're muted.
As far as the van goes, is it something we own and maintain, or is it owned by someone else and maintained by someone else?
We're on a payment plan right now, and the payment for this year is the $7,704, but there is a balloon payment in the next fiscal year for the final payment of $22,500.
Okay, so it's a van we own and we maintain, right?
Correct, and insure.
Okay. Great. Lease dump truck plow for $11,026.
Yes. I don't have a lot to say about it. It's something we use every day.
John, that's the final lease payment on their pickup truck. I think it's the final, but the ones you're working on right now are all obligations by contract from prior year. So the final one that we would have in this listing would be new leases coming up in November, which, based on conversations with Dr. Cron and Jane and Doug, from the financial standpoint, would be prudent for us to move forward with those, as it will save the district a lot of money on outside transportation.
Okay. These various 7D transit van leases, does that fall into that same category?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's one article for $57,416, I believe, and
Yep.
those are for existing leases that we're still under obligation for, and then but 2 of our leases come up in November of this year. So we would need new leases to replace those 2 vehicles, and that's the second category of the $12,600.
Okay, and that's Article 18. Those keeping score at home. So 12,600, 57,416. All of these are lease payments on vans and looks like they've been obviously well vetted by the town. It makes sense for us to be involved with those.
And
Right,
just
and just-
briefly,
Good.
these vans, we've been very creative with these vans so that we are transporting our special education students in a very efficient manner. So by renting vans and having our own drivers man these vans, we are cutting down on paying outside vendors. So it's a huge savings for the district.
Yeah, and we're also using them, in addition to SPED, we're using them for foster and homeless as well, which has significantly reduced our foster and our homeless transportation costs during the current fiscal year.
All right, great stuff. All right, so with that, that covers the articles. Any questions from anybody on the articles? Now, we had this conversation with the finance committee, and Jane, you and I talked about it earlier this afternoon. We're trying to, as a committee, we're trying to get to the point where we have a better picture of what's going to happen over the next few years. And we've asked for some projections. Specifically, we're trying to look at the biggest budget items and then work our way down through the budget. So, saving a few bucks on something that we spend $1,000 on is it's not really worth our time. But looking at our biggest budget items, so obviously labor in general across the town is is our largest budget item, and the school department has the largest labor pool. So we did ask for some details on that. Jane was nice enough for, over a couple of phone calls, her and I have talked about the fact that, the school department definitely wants to provide us some of that information, but given the current circumstances, we're not going to get any of that information this time around, but we'll try and target getting into it, by the time we get into the summer and things like that. We can pull that data together, and hopefully by that time we'll have a better idea of what's going to look like going forward. But the goal is, again, to get an idea of, with the biggest budget items, where do we project to be over the next 5 years, and then have the opportunity to kind of evaluate all of that on the table. We don't make the decisions as the finance committee, we give recommendations. And all we're looking to do is make sure that all of this information is out there, it's being discussed, and that, when things do finally come to the finance committee, it has, more information has been reviewed and evaluated. So we appreciate, Jane, your offer to help us in that endeavor. And again, this comes out of best practices that many, many other towns are doing to look at projections across all of the different departments. So, we're trying to get on board with some best practices. So I know that, the committee, I talked about that. We had talked about it in the past, and I wanted to make sure everybody had an update. The final thing I wanted to talk about as far as the school budget goes was anything that the school wanted to share in terms of looking forward, especially in the immediate future, and what's going on right now with the coronavirus and the delays and things like that, and specifically focusing in on anticipated budget impacts, anything that you can share, or anything that you might say, this is when we feel like we may have some better answers, and then reserve the opportunity to come back to the finance committee to talk further about it. So I don't know, Dr. Cron, if you want to give us some background on that.
John, this is such a dynamic situation. It's changing day to day. The governor's making proclamations. The Department of Education is coming out with updates on a pretty regular basis. We're all sort of holding on for dear life. I will say, for you as committee members and taxpayers and members of the town, know that we have a very, very solid, education plan in place with our teachers. Our teachers are reaching out to our students on a daily basis and making connections with them, and holding virtual classes, and just doing all kinds of amazing things to support our students through this crisis. We're serving approximately 360 lunches and breakfasts per day through our lunch program, Monday through Friday from 11:30 to 12:30 at the high school every day. We've averaged out at about 360 a day. That's Adele Leonard and our food service department. So I just want to say thank you to the town, and thank you to the finance committee for all of your support. And if there are updates that become, pertinent for FinCom, I'll certainly come back and discuss them with you. But right now, we're trying to get through the next 2 weeks. We hope that we're reaching a plateau with this situation, and in 2 weeks, we're hoping we're at the worst of it, and then we'll start to unpack things from there. But I feel very confident in our teachers, and the district is in a very good place despite this very scary time. I'm really grateful for our first responders, and I consider our lunch ladies and our administrators that are serving those lunches 5 days a week as sort of first responders in their own way. They're putting their own health at risk. But I especially want to thank our police and firemen and our nurses and our doctors who are working every day and exposing themselves. And so again, if anything comes back that seems to have a budget impact, I will let the Finance Committee know.
We appreciate that. Any final questions for the public schools, Rockland Public Schools?
No.
All right, thanks very much. I appreciate it,
Thank you.
Dr. Cron, Tim, and Jane. We appreciate you joining the call.
John, before they disconnect, can we vote the Rockland Public Schools budget so they can present the vote to their school committee at the next meeting?
Okay.
The recommended amount, I'm not sure what page it's on because I don't have the report in front of me. The
Jane, do you have
recommended
it handy?
amount. I'm sorry?
I think Jane has it.
Okay, we're looking for the page number. I have the recommended amount at $26,928,952.01, and that is in your budget report under Department 300. And it's the first line saying Rockland Public Schools.
That number on Dr. Cron's presentation?
No, it's different. They have to go back, and Dr. Cron, you can address this part if you'd like, as far as the school committee is concerned, please.
I see about a $20,000 difference.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. That number was voted on by the school committee, so that's the number that I'm currently working with, but we'll go back and make that adjustment with school committee at our next meeting.
Now we're talking about, your total is 26,949 versus the 26,928, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so Joe, do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the budget at the 26,928, 952.01.
Okay, I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Lori. All in favor? And if you could voice, wave, do something.
Aye. So those not on video.
All right, Jeff's up. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll just any opposed. We'll take a voice vote. Any opposed? Okay.
Where's Bobby?
You got that? All right, you're all set. Thanks very much, Dr. Cron and the school department.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Change it. Ron.
Okay. Mr. Hickey, how are you, sir?
Hello, John, members of the committee. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you want me to share your presentation, or do you want to do it?
That would be great, John. I don't know if folks were able to get hard copies of that. If you have that ability, I would be happy to refer to it as it comes up on the screen. I'm also joined tonight by your representative to our regional school committee, Bob Mahoney.
Hi, Mr. Mahoney.
Well,
I want that one. That one. You have to open it. I may have to check and make sure where it's open. Bear with me. I had it up when we started, so I know it's open somewhere. Social regional, there it is. Right. This, this, and that. There. All right, can somebody confirm they can see my screen?
I can see it, John.
Yes.
Okay, let me make it wider. Okay,
Ooh, so wide.
fantastic. All right, so we're good. All right, Tom, if you want to walk us through that. Social Regional Vocational School District.
Sure, happy to do so. Maybe some of you were able to watch the brief screencast I was able to put together. So I'll keep it at a reasonable pace and not have you feel like you wasted your time watching that. This booklet contains a budget presentation I made to the school committee in December, and also the typical detailed financial pages at the end of the document. So around page 12 of this document, it gets more into the numbers. The first 11 or so pages focus on what our accomplishments and goals are, and what we're hoping to accomplish in 1 year budget. And then we spend a little time in the presentation talking about the future. And I appreciate the chair and members of this committee asking about projections, because we as a school district have spent a while talking about the fact that our look to the future is with building infrastructure. And so while I think this budget is a solid budget where we're actually asking for fewer dollars from Rockland and fewer dollars from our existing, from our 8 in-district towns because of some revenue projections for this year, I do see to the future the need for major infrastructure. I'll get to that in a moment. So this page that John has up shows the kind of a one-page cheat sheet of our accomplishments and goals. An overall budget increase of about 4.09%. That is to the total bottom line. It's not town specific. And this page is a summary of what you'll see in the following PowerPoint pages. John, if you don't mind continuing down there. I try to provide some headliners, which I'll get to. The message I'm sending is our revenue projections for non-resident tuition and regional transportation means that we're going to be able to offset the budget increase and take a little money out of stabilization to offset our lease payment on our propane bus fleet. So that puts us in a very good position overall. Enrollment always drives assessment numbers, but when we're able to account for that, the days of saying increased revenue could be over for a while as we look already with a bit of a shudder to fiscal 22. But for now, I like the position we're in. We were able to retire our debt on our roof and window project from 2010 a year early. So that has helped drop off the debt service portion of all of our town's assessments. And I'll get to that in a little while. Personnel matters. There are some personnel adjustments. They're essentially either I've got a part-time teacher making them full-time due to enrollment increases in the program, and some positions that I'm rolling off of grants onto the budget. And I point out in this budget presentation, as well as the others I've been able to do, that about 16% of this budget includes costs that are not normally found in a school district budget because we're an entity unto ourselves. And if you've been on the committee for a while, I think this is maybe my 9th presentation. And this is something that we just have to point out every year because it's important. It's important that it's a unique fact of the fact that we would have unemployment, we would have health insurance, and we would have everything baked into one number because we only bring one number to each town every year.
So, Tom, you mentioned Chapter 70 funding.
Yes.
Is soon to be level. Did your school not get anything out of the recent increase in Chapter 70 that was announced?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. The answer is yes, we did. And what we typically do in January is we schedule our January school committee meeting so that it dovetails oftentimes the same night that the governor's numbers come out. So we get those numbers in the afternoon, and a few hours later, we're at our school committee meeting able to present this. We saw a very modest increase of about $16,000. We factored that modest increase in to these numbers. So in December, when I made this presentation, our assumption is level funding. So the delta is about $16,000 or about $30 a student.
So one other thing is you also mentioned that you're increasing the English learner instructor. And we just heard Dr. Cron talk about the impact that English language learner is having in his school system. Are you seeing something similar where you have an ever-increasing amount of folks that English is not a primary language?
Our percentages are far lower, but I anticipate that they're going to increase. 5 years ago, we had none.
Right.
And now we have, I think we have 4 or 5 students. So I'm funding an English learner instructor on a Title I grant. And what I'm beginning to do, that isn't a typo, that actually says 0.1. So I'm beginning the process now of assuming that at the federal level, we're not going to see large increases in federal entitlement grants. And given the fact that the EL population is going to increase, I have no doubt, this is just a strategic move to not over-rely on grants that might not be there. And that's the purpose. So we've had this instructor in place for a couple of years now. Her focus is on supporting those students and in helping to support the teachers who are the content experts in teaching those students.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this, John. I'll have you scroll through this. This is the guts of the presentation, the expanded version of that cheat sheet that I just went over. We talk about great accomplishments with community outreach, MCAS, the full school experience for our students. Very proud of our faculty and staff and our students. Very proud of our ability to try to make the most use of the limited space we have, securing competitive grants for technical equipment. I'm happy to be able to report those accomplishments typically every year. The goals we set for the future are continuing to provide the best curriculum we can with the space we have. Focus on the subgroups that need the attention. You heard Alan talk about that earlier. High needs and economically disadvantaged subgroups. We want to increase attendance. We want to target whatever their needs are relative to high stakes testing. Certainly this is a very unsettled time here, and it's something that we will remain focused on once things can return to normal. I tell our committee every year and our members of our respective finance committees that our budget is built from zero. This is very important to me. I found it to be immensely helpful when I ask our shop, academic and non-instructional departments to itemize through Google Sheets what they're looking for. I don't say that I count all the paper clips, but I certainly ask people to tell me what they're looking for paper clips next year. And it's a great discussion tool, because rather than taking last year's number and adding 2% to it and just seeing how things shake out, this allows me to move considerable amounts of money between cost centers. Oftentimes it results in a variance. A number could be high and then it could drop and then it could go back up again. But the good news is that I'm able to look at excuse me, the big picture and see that when there's a need in a program, maybe it's for a piece of equipment, maybe it's replacing a Chrome cart, we can target those dollars because our people are planning. They're planning several years out. And unless something breaks unexpectedly, which we can deal with that, we're not having multiple departments asking for last minute, very important things. They're all good planners, and it helps make my job easier. The process, we begin that in the fall, and it leads to a budget that allows me to achieve the goals we need to for the sake of the students. And now to get into the proposal a little deeper, I will not repeat these slides, but the next slide after this are the headliners I've already discussed. I will dwell on the slide, John, when you get to a slide that refers to capital, if you don't mind. Yep, I would have talked about that already. Here we go. So capital is part of our budget. It is built into the one number that we bring all of our communities. And our capital requests have in the last several years been increasing as our capital needs have been increasing. This upcoming year, my capital needs for instructional reasons are almost negligible. You can see I'm looking to replace some interactive screens at about 7,000 and change a piece in two academic areas and in one of our technical areas. But the bulk of the money that we're going to continue to seek from our communities to maintain our 1962 building with our 1992 addition is bread and butter infrastructure. I will speak to each of these here. There is supporting detail if you have that document, and I won't go through it unless you'd like me to perhaps pause on a question. We did have a facilities audit a couple of years ago. I would have told you this last year and perhaps even the year before, as it was hot off the press. We're now at the point in our facilities plan where we're looking to identify some larger scope needs. So the first one we're going to look at is doing some septic repairs, as we are on a septic system, and also some funds for stabilization. So we're positioned, and again, I would have also mentioned this in years past, we're positioned with our stabilization fund that if we were invited into the MSBA pipeline. We've applied again for the 6th time. We will have funds available so that when MSBA does invite us and we have to go to our 8 communities and say, will you support us taking the next step? What I don't want to do is ask for that, because that's always going to happen in January, right around the time that we're building an annual budget. And I don't want to have to say we're looking for this support, and also I need to kick up the annual budget by $750,000 to cover feasibility costs. We are now positioned that when we are invited in, we will have the stabilization funds to access to do that. So we can take the next step. And none of you are strangers to building construction projects, how long they take, but that the first important step is knowing that the communities are behind us. And so I think having those stabilization funds available does help. Money is
You have,
also,
so currently right now, Tom, are you saying you don't have a stabilization fund, or you do?
we do, John. We've had it for several years, and each year the strategy remains the same. We attempt to fund our capital needs in an annual assessment. We put money into stabilization for an eventual feasibility or buildings and grounds renovation. So maybe it's covering, most of the money will cover feasibility, but it could also be used to offset other capital projects, not the least of which is what's above in the middle of that slide where it says OPM and designer fees. We're at the point now where what I said to the committee back in December is that we need to look at the next priority item in our long-range plan, which I believe is the replacement of a roof over our 1992 addition, which is the original roof, and the windows and the metal panels around the windows. I go on at length into this PowerPoint to provide resources to back that up. This budget year, fiscal 21, is not the year we're doing any projects. If we need to borrow money to do it, and it's likely we'd have to borrow some, we have to come back to our communities. But the catch for us, and it's just the way it is that I want to communicate this early and often, because if we end up moving ahead looking to do a roof and window project, we can't do such a project in the middle of a school year. It would have to be, if you bear with me, this would have to be on this slide, thank you for forwarding it, this would have to be at our most aggressive in the summer of 2021. So in order to do that and go through the procurement process and go out to bid, it means we have to have design plans in place sometime in fiscal 20, put those bid documents out on the street, and get a sense of what the market is going to drive a cost. So if in the fall we go out to bid, and in the wintertime, we've got some numbers. Now, in order to contract with a contractor for the following summer, we have to make sure that our communities understand what we're trying to do. Under the law, if a regional school committee wants to authorize debt, it can do so. Authorize the debt, the first step in the process. And then within 7 days of that authorization, it's got to present this debt authorization to our communities. And if we present it in the way that we did back in 2010, it means that we're going to be looking for each community to say either nothing or say yes. But if any one of our 8 communities says no to a debt project, the whole project stops. The last thing that the committee and I would want to do, were we to try to stick to this timeline, and this is just a supposition on my part, but just to lay it out. Whenever we do this, it's going to have to be done during a summertime. I would not want any community to feel blindsided that, oh, look at, you want us to do what? So I want to just play a hypothetical with you. If we were to authorize, if the committee authorized this debt, what we would end up doing, if all of our communities said yes, and we had an exact number and everybody knew how much it was going to be, at the end of the day, what would happen is I would end up 1 year from now sitting in front of you, bringing you this debt, bringing you your share of the assessment for this roof project, and it would be baked into the one number. So we don't have separate capital numbers but a school operating cost. It's all built together. So it's just important for me to point that out now. It's not a super important thing at this moment, but it is something that I would intend to keep Doug and all of you folks informed about as we progress. I do not believe that, I do believe we can do a project that has us cost sharing this. In other words, it's not a project that we would have to borrow 100% of the funds. And in the later pages on this presentation, you'll see some projected numbers. And I'd be happy to just quickly focus on some of them if you'd like. Right, so on this page here, if you bear with me, the columns read the construction costs, which is broken down into the roof, the windows, and the panels under the windows. Those are the terms that the engineers used when they helped put our plan together. So back in fiscal 18, their estimated price tag in the upper right corner of this slide for all three of those components was about $1.7 million. They asked us to assume a 4% cost escalation, which if you go down a few lines, you would see hypothetically that we're probably looking at about $2 million with contingency about $2.1 million for such a project that I've described to you. Now for fiscal 21, the numbers I'm asking for are below that white line. The 199 and change for the design and the about $70,000 for a project manager, which we'd be obligated to retain given that it's a construction project over $1.5 million. So for fiscal 21, we get the expert team together, we come up with a design, and then we decide whether we have the capacity to shop all of this or some of this as a construction project for fiscal 22.
So Tom, with the current, with the current, what we're in right now, the current climate, you're looking at, interest rates at, ridiculously low. I don't know how that affects municipal rates, et cetera, but
it would, yes, favorably, I presume.
I think that the 4% cost increases are going to start to are going to turn the other direction.
Yes.
Which we normally see during a slowdown where, construction costs come down. So I'm sure you're taking that into consideration as you approach this project.
Yes, the key point for me is not to ask for money, ready, fire, aim. It's to do the homework, find out what the market is going to fetch, communicate actively so that everyone is on the same page. And then when we do get a number, then we talk about how much we can cover. Can we take something out of stabilization? Can we build a little bit of the cost into fiscal 22? And what percentage of the cost would we end up borrowing and over what term? And I can talk a little bit more about how debt is broken down a little later in the handout. But that's most of my story for this year really is focusing on the future, but it's worth talking about now. The next several pages I will not dwell on. It's my attempt to show what the facilities plan tells us. We know that we're an aging, popular building. We know that we need to maintain it. We don't need a new building. We don't. We need to maintain the building. We know we've got about $12 million of projected maintenance costs. We don't have to do all of it now. Thank you, John. On the next slide down in red, those are some of the facility plan items in red that I've already referenced earlier. And our entire facilities plan is on the home page of our website. But there are a lot of the other maintenance items are really just it's a 1962 building. We've done a great job maintaining it, no question about it. And it's just that we can't stop time. So some of these things we're going to try to tackle it. Obviously, getting a 53% coupon from MSBA is the way we want to go. We just want them to invite us in so that we are not, but if we have to incur the cost ourselves, we want to be strategic about when we're asking for the money. The rest of this presentation tells you that we want to add space, we're lacking vocational space, we're on a very small footprint. Thank you, John. And you can continue through this, aging heating systems. We have a modular unit that's 20 years old that really should be built into the student envelope. We're working creative wonders with the existing space we have. The rest of the presentation talks about enrollment. Thank you. So Rockland's enrollment for this budget cycle we're down 15 students. That's the biggest driver in any year, whether we're talking about the intricacies of the statutory formula. But I'm coming tonight looking for about $95,000 less than last year. And that's part of the reason why. The following slides talk about enrollment trends. And then on the following slide, I explain on this one slide, and then in more detail, how we unpack an assessment. So if you're looking at Rockland's assessment number, we tell you how much it is, the bottom line, and then we work backwards. So those categories I can gladly talk about in a little bit. Thank you, John. And this is just a summary I gave to the committee that's now almost old news.
Right. Yeah, and some of those numbers, especially like the May 4th, looks like it's going to change.
Exactly, yes, indeed. From this point forward in the budget document, I'll focus on a couple of numbers. We'll focus on Rockland's numbers, but here's where we begin to unpack where we're coming from. At the top of this page, you'll see revenue sources. And then you'll see a little ways down, it says total revenue. So I was saying earlier that we are projecting an increase in revenue. And that's going to help to offset the overall budget increase. If you scroll down to district assessment detail, you will see the one-year comparison. If you find Rockland, you'll see that the assessment request for fiscal 21 is $1,833,866, which is a reduction of $95,382. The next chunk of that page simply takes that money and divides it by the number of kids to give you a per pupil perspective for all 8 of our communities. The variance has to do with a town's ability to pay, and since education reform, that has been the case. Prior to 1993, it didn't matter what town you were from, everything was divided equally. Page 13, this is not going to be great for prime time, so get your chiropractor on the phone if you have to do tip to the left, or tip to the, oh, John, you're the best. Here we go. If you look at Rockland's column here, here's the breakdown of how we get to that 1,833 that you see there in yellow. We'll start at the top. The biggest component of every town's assessment is the minimum contribution. That is the number that is calculated by the state that we get when we get the governor's number. The next item that we display for our towns is the offset. That is, when we collect non-resident tuition, we collect it in 1 year and we divvy it up to the towns in the form of a reduced assessment. So the money we collected last year, that's Rockland's proportional share offsetting the assessment increase. The next number down, 753,474, that accounts for all of the expenses beyond the state's minimum that we need, basically operating expenses above the minimum to run the schoolhouse. And then the other categories are transportation, debt, and capital. Transportation costs this year for us are flat, which is great. Our repair costs are down. We've transitioned to a lease to buy on a fleet of 12 propane buses. Our labor costs are stable. So, and we're projecting 80% regional reimbursement. This is great news, as it has been a political football in years past. But now with that projection, that confident projection, we can pass those savings along. The debt service is very small. We only have a $4,456 interest payment. And the capital share is the percentage share, which I'll talk about percentage share in a moment. The rest of that document gives you a 1-year comparison. This next page, again, if you want to focus on the Rockland column, a quick scan, we just want to provide you with the actual enrollment numbers that we use. To calculate transpo, to calculate above the minimum, it's all in proportion. So Rockland's share of our transportation costs and operating costs above the minimum are 26.62%. That's based on the October 1 numbers, total proportional head count. The next category, debt service, is based on the 3 years of enrollment prior to a debt authorization. So when we did that roof and window project I mentioned back in 2010 or 2011, we used the 3 years of enrollment that preceded that, which you see on this screen. So for the life of this debt, Rockland's share of that project was 26.23%. So this year, Rockland's share of the debt is $1,169, and that's the same. That's the math. It's 26 and change % of that interest payment. Capital costs are also based on enrollment, but they are a revolving average. So each year we drop off a year and we pick up a year. It's a rolling 3-year average, so no one town would get whacked with a spike in capital in 1 year. This page is from the DESI website, just to back up the numbers on the minimum contributions. Here's a glance of our current enrollment with our current freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior classes. And I would say, John, members of the committee, from this point forward, the rest of this document is essentially the budget breakdown, which I would, given in the interest of time, I would not go through. But I would be happy to answer any questions on any numbers that you might have either now or afterwards. In general, I feel as though I'm reluctant to call something a level services budget because we're moving things around. But other than the capital, which has taken up most of your precious time tonight, that's always the biggest conversation point for me. We have a lot of students. We don't have a lot of space to put additional staff, and we want to modernize the building for the future. So thank you for listening.
So Tom, I have a question here, and this, I always kind of dig into this a little bit when we're talking with you, looks like you're forecasting about a 30% increase in your health insurance year over year.
Our health insurance, so the health insurance amounts that we factor
Well, not
in-
year over year, I'm sorry. You took a big hit between 18 and 19 in health
Yes,
insurance.
and that has, I believe, John, has more to do with migration. When I'm building the budget recommendation in December, I'm trying to get very early projections. December is not the best time to do so, but I generally take what expert advice I can get at the time, and I also factor in that a few staff members will either hire and they'll have health insurance, or someone might migrate from a plan, not from being on the health insurance, who's an existing employee. So that's usually the calculus that goes into that number.
So, but are you getting, like, where are you buying your insurance, your health insurance?
We remain a member of the Mayflower Municipal Health Group. Our projected increases on all plans for next year is 2%, which is less than what we were projecting.
And, Biz, are we using the same thing, Mayflower?
No, we aren't. We are using Blue Cross Blue Shield. We moved out of Mayflower, I think, 3 years ago, as it was more financially prudent for our situation. However, the situation with the VOTEC would be totally separate from us.
Yeah, I'm just, hey, by comparison, it's, all of it leads to expense, and, it's, if one's doing better than the other and we can get great service, it's obviously something to consider. But in any case, I just wanted to kind of touch on that, because it looks like again, you did take a big hit, but then this year it looks like you're forecasting a 2% increase. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I would anticipate, again, I would feel more confident once we've hired all of our staff and the open enrollment window is over. That's when I start to look confidently. Again, given this economic climate, it would not surprise me if we had staff members who perhaps we've had on staff for years who don't take our health insurance, could very well be jumping on to our health insurance if their spouse or partner was unable to maintain the health insurance with their place of employment.
All right. What other questions do folks have for Tom Hickey regarding the social VOTEC?
Hey, Tom, I have a quick question for you regarding the out-of-district numbers increasing.
Yes.
Looks like there was a pretty big jump there. Is that just the way things are shaking out? Is that a concerted effort to bring in extra non-district revenue for your members to kind of keep costs lower?
In 2015, we revised our admissions policy that would allow us to start by accepting all in-district students who had an application score of 60 or higher.
Okay.
And only after that point would we begin to see what the market is for non-resident interest. So it varies from year to year, Craig. I can tell you this. While we're in with this crazy situation when right now we're still trying to talk with our 8th grade families in our towns. I can tell you that for this incoming freshman class, I already have 168 accepted students. Every single one of them is within our district. If things ended today, and we typically don't take more than 170,
Yeah.
We'll have no non-resident kids next year.
Okay.
So it does vary.
Okay. How's that process going? I know we were fortunately one of the families to accept, but I know there's some other, are there other kids waiting, and how's that going now with this whole kind of freeze in place? Are you still moving forward?
My admissions staff are working remotely. One of their top priorities is to follow up with families who have been offered admission. And we track that, and I meet with them remotely now, on a regular basis. So that if we've offered a family admission and we try to contact them multiple different ways and we haven't heard from them, at some point we're going to have to move on. But I will say to you that 95% of the families we've contacted have responded, and very few have said no. Again, that I will tell you that varies. Some years, 20% of the people we accept could say, nope, I'd rather stay in our sending district. But this year is definitely different.
Craig, if I can, this is Bob Mahoney, by the way, if I could just interject one thing to go along with Dr. Hickey. The admissions staff has really been working hard because a lot of the districts that we have are really not allowing, because as a lot of people have known, that public education has become a competitive market, that they're really not allowing a lot of time for us to come in and promote the schools in all of our different areas. And our guidance department does a great job in our admissions team to get this word out and to work with the families that are trying to get into our school.
Thank you both. If you do get accepted into the MSBA program, are you looking to take out, you had $11 million, you chunked off a couple of them already.
Yeah.
Are you looking to then just say, okay, we're going to take whatever it is, $8 million now and jump in and finish all this stuff at once? Or does that program allow you to still structure it over 2 or 3 years to do your roof, then do your windows, then do your carpets, whatever it happens to be?
It's a great question. I'll try to keep my answer brief. I could talk for hours about this. It's real important to us. We are very cognizant of debt fatigue. We would be very reluctant to want to artificially splinter debt projects to our 8 communities. As you can imagine, sometimes it's tough to get something passed in one community. But to your specific question, Craig, no, MSBA would expect a feasibility study and a design and one ask up front. Okay. So if I gave you to John's earlier point about forecasting, if there was any big, and I think I attempted to communicate this to John, that I think our biggest forecast is that if the engineers are saying, we need about $45 million to renovate the existing footprint and add on 30,000 square feet of desperately needed space. So if there's anything in the next few years that I would be coming to talk about, which would make everything else would become a distraction, is, okay, we've got a $50 million project and MSBA is going to cover half of that. Now we're at 25 million. Now we're going to borrow it over 25 years. So we've got $1 million a year of debt spread out amongst our 8 towns. Let's assume it's 0% interest. Yeah. Rockland might be 25% of that. Now that's $250,000. That debt line right now, that's $1,000 for that interest payment. That's where you would see that number. Okay. That's where you would see that number. And it's one thing for me to come and ask about borrowing perhaps for a for a roof and window project that's cresting at maybe $2 million. But that's going to be our big story. That's going to be where we have to spend a lot of energy. MSBA would give us one shot. And knowing we need 8 communities to buy into it, because for some communities, if you bear with me on this, if a particular community wants to support us, they may be presented with a budget increase where I may have a level services budget, but we're invited into MSBA, and that spike in 1 year might lead a community to say, I think we might have to do a debt authorization for this VOTEC project, which creates a whole other political component for that individual community. I would not have this problem in Cohasset, not because Cohasset is wealthy, but because Cohasset's share of the debt they could absorb in their operating budget. They would not, it's very,
Right.
very small.
Just looking at your numbers quick with us, Whitman, Abington,
Yes.
they're going to be significant numbers that are going to have to pass through a lot of hoops to make this a truth statement.
Absolutely right. At about 75% of the student enrollment, and ultimately sharing that proportion, again, it goes back to the philosophy of if we explain ourselves early, if we can give, if people are forecasting, I'm a big fan of forecasting. And, you know, I live in Hanson. Whitman Hanson is struggling right now with assessments and budgets. But I would want to be putting myself on their radar as well, because the folks in those communities that are forecasting, they want to know what's coming down the road. The same way I want to hear from the welding shop, what's coming down the road. We're all trying to do what's right for kids. We don't want surprises. And so that's a real quick forecast, but I'm glad, thank you for asking about that big number. Because in the big picture, we would do a deep renovation and we'd add a little bit onto it. And then that school will be ready to go for the next 50 years.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one other thing I'll just ask, Tom, is there any potential in the future for you, like I always ask about this, but you know, it's money that's out there that the taxpayers have already put aside. We do have like CPA funds as well as the other towns. Is there any, does your building or your grounds or anything like that constitute anything that could fall under that kind of a funding source at all?
I appreciate you asking that, John. Just as a quick sidebar, I happen to be the chairman of the CPC in Hanson, so I can answer that question with confidence. No. Unless one day we get to preserve it as a historical artifact. But unfortunately, CPA funds cannot be used for maintenance. We could potentially, I think we've done a great job in the last 2 years, and we're gonna continue to work on our recreational fields in the back of the building. That potentially is an area, as we all know, that CPA funds can be used to support open space and recreation. They cannot be used to put in a turf field, but they can be used for design costs for a turf field. But because I'm a region with 8 communities, I have looked into this a little bit and found that for that to happen, let's say I wanted to spend $50,000 on design fees to put in a turf field. Be more than that, but I would probably have to go to 8 separate town meetings with 8 separate articles. And I don't know what, so one of our 8 communities, I think at the moment it's Whitman, does not have CPA. It probably means I would just have to go and put it on as a regular warrant article like anybody else. So thanks for asking, but unfortunately, I think the well is dry on that one.
Okay. All right. All right, great presentation. You guys do some great work over there. I mean, just the rave reviews every time I talk to people that have students over there.
Thank
Just
you.
really amazing stuff. And it's I don't know. I keep telling people the trades is don't like just run off to college because you think that's the, and even if you go to college with the trades, I still feel like, you know, people are not thinking about the trades as much as they could. And you guys do a great job of preparing those students for the future. So
thank you, John. I think we do. Bob and I would agree with that 100%.
Yep, 100%. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Social Voc Tech for Tom or Bob?
No, I'm good. Thank you, though. Appreciate your presentation.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Liz, Biz, do you want to vote their budget?
Yes, I would like to, please. We would
Okay,
like
we'll
to
go with
vote
the
their
same order
budget.
then.
Yep, the budget is $1,833,866 as presented by the South Shore Regional Voc Technical School.
I'll make a motion to accept that at 1,800,033,866.
Okay, I
I'll
have a motion.
second.
I have a second from Laurie.
Second. Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thumbs up. And I get, Bill Principe is having trouble on his thing, but he just voted yes as well. So I got a text from him. We're good. All right, so we're good. We got that, Julie, all set? Perfect. Thanks, Julie. All right. Thanks again, Tom. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be seeing you soon at town meeting.
Okay, be well, everybody. Thanks so much.
Hey, John, I just wanted to have Dr. Hickey, before he leaves, just give a presentation of what we've been doing, what one teacher's been doing with the virus that's going on. Dr. Hickey, you want to explain that?
Oh, sure. Goodness. We have an engineering teacher. His name's Jerry Shaw, and he's basically coming to school every day, even though the school, the school is closed. He comes down every day and has networked 9 3D printers, and he's making 50 to 75 face shields per day that we are distributing to Brockton Hospital, South Shore Hospital, Beth Israel Plymouth, Old Colony Hospice. We've got folks reaching out, I don't want to say almost every day, but it seems like it. And we're actually in the process of getting a few more 3D printers that folks at in Hanover are going to bring over to Jerry. Jerry wants absolutely no attention for doing this, but he's doing a fantastic job, and we're very appreciative. We are one community, and this crisis has revealed that in many, many ways. I would like to use the opportunity to give a shout out to Adele Leonard and the folks with Rockland Food, the folks that are doing food service that Alan was talking about earlier, because our kids are Rockland kids, South Shore kids are Rockland kids. They're all our kids. And if they're in need of meals, Adele is also taking care of Rockland kids as well who go to our school. We actually brought some face shields over to Adele. So we are working together. There are some bright spots in this, and I'm proud of what our folks are doing. And so thank you, Bob, for mentioning that. It's worth talking about.
That's great. Awesome. I'd love to hear that. Thank you again, guys, for joining us tonight, and hopefully we'll see you soon, all right?
Okay, thanks
Thank you
again.
very much for having us, and thank you for everything you do.
Good night.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
These guys.
Okay. So Biz, if I'm looking at this, the line items we have, I don't believe we have voted Norfolk Aggie tuition or Norfolk Aggie transportation under the education.
Correct, we have not.
Okay, so Joe, I'll entertain a motion to for the Norfolk Aggie tuition. I don't know if you have that in front of you.
Motion to accept that budget at $189,072.
Correct.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Second.
From Lori, all in favor? All right,
Aye.
vote. Aye. Okay, and I got another aye from Bill. So Bill Principe's on board with that.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, and then we have Norfolk Agricultural Transportation. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve $15,000 for the Norfolk Agricultural Transportation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. I got another aye from Bill. Good job. Thanks, Bill. All right. So now, Biz, do we need to vote the total amount of the budget for that, for the line item 300 for education?
No, we do not, because we voted each individual budget within the education aspect.
Okay. Do we need to vote the final budget? Biz?
No, because you voted department by department, you don't have to do a final budget vote.
Okay. Hey, can we do a once over to see if, is there anything else in the budget that we haven't voted?
Not that I'm aware of. From the best of my recollection and knowledge, speaking to both you and Doug and Serena, everything else was voted except for the schools. And then we have to look at the articles. John, is it possible to take down the vote technical schools slides?
Yeah, hang on for a second.
Okay, thank you. Unless somebody else
no,
feels
that's
something
fine.
wasn't voted. Okay.
This is Doug. I agree. I think it's just the other few capital items that weren't on the prior version of the capital plan. And I know that's why Gino's here in case there's any questions about the IT item. I think those are the only remaining things to vote.
So Julie, just to check in with you, because I know you have copious notes on all this stuff. Are you on board with the budget items? Do you feel like there's anything we missed?
Oh,
No?
she said no. Yeah.
Said no. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, good. So we're gonna push forward then. We'll say that the budget is complete. Thanks everyone for their help with that. As far as the articles go, I have, let me see here. Article 3, which was the FY 2021 budget for GF Water and Sewer. I have an H listed next to it, which means hold on that one. Is that one ready? Was that one voted or is ready to be voted?
Doug, do you know if the capital plan approved those?
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that they voted everything and
What
included.
item are you talking about in particular?
Sorry.
John, what item are you talking about in particular?
Article 3.
I don't have my articles in front of me. What is it?
It's Article 3 for FY 2021 budget for GF Water and Sewer. 73,366,956. I think that's for.
That's the total budgets, John. You've got the general fund budget, you have the water budget, and then you have the sewer budget. The total is all in one article. So
Okay.
rather than putting 3 separate articles, we're combining into one for an overall vote.
Okay, so because we've finished the general fund, now we
Right.
can vote Article 3.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
That should be all set.
All right, so Joe, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Do you have the article in front of you now, or do you need?
I can't find my copy.
It would be the town meeting warrant.
Yeah, the ones that were handed out the last meeting, I misplaced them and I can't find them.
Okay. Hey, Lori has it.
There you go. Everybody see it?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so Lori, do you want to make a motion to approve it?
Sure. Let's see. I make a motion to approve Article 3 for what GF budgets, GF Water and Sewer, $73,366,956
I have
to
a
raise,
motion.
appropriate, and transfer.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, here we go. We got a bunch of ayes. I got an aye from Bill. Thanks, Bill. Okay. So that's Article 3 covered. Article 11 for the IT, computer and technology upgrades for $61,600. Joe, you confirm that's on the capital plan?
I'm sorry, which one was that again?
Article 11 for computer and technology upgrades for IT is $61,600.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. Rich did not send me the full adjusted budget. Yeah. How do you?
Is that on there? You see that one?
Doug or Biz, can you confirm that that's on there? Because that's why we held it. It wasn't on.
Hang on, I'll look it up again. Hold on.
Did Rich send a copy of the capital plan to you guys?
I did. I'm just going to look it up again right now.
We met with them.
Yeah, he didn't send, he's pretty lax on sending it out to the members when he updates it.
John, by the way, can you see the chat at the bottom? You see the chat?
Yep.
Because Julie was trying to actually communicate with you with that.
What balances? Stabilization fund, did you get to his message?
This is Doug. Yes, it is on there. If you'd like, John, I can email it to you right now so you can look at it and screen share it if you'd like. Want me to do that?
Okay.
Okay, hold
on. Julie was asking, what is the balance in the stabilization fund? Biz, do we have the balance in the stabilization fund? I know you and I were talking about that earlier, but.
The balance in the stabilization fund right now is 1.75 million, give or take a couple of thousand.
Well, and you said we're gonna put it all on black, right?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. We're gonna put it on 2, or actually 21. I was 21.
There you go.
So John, I just emailed it to you if you want to screen share it and pull it up.
I gotta figure out where that is. Hang on for a second here. So I want the Rockland CPC 5-year plan. I've got 2 attachments here. Does it matter which one?
The first one will do it.
Okay.
Colby, stop it. I'll let you out in a minute, Colby. Sorry. Dog's over here whimpering. He wants to go out.
We do not have a balance for the VOTEC stabilization fund.
So John, if you scroll down, you'll see the IT 616 that we're talking about. If you just scroll that page down.
Hang on. I'm trying to get the thing out of the way. I got technical difficulties here. Okay.
Feels great so far. There you
IT, here it is right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Computer and technology, and it's listed as a score of 29. So it is on the capital plan for 61,600. So I'll entertain a motion to approve Article 11 for IT, computer and technology upgrade, 61,600. This was already presented by Gino at a previous meeting. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept that article. The 61,600.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we got a bunch of ayes. Sorry. All right, good stuff. Thank you. Now we skip down to Article 22 through 29. We're all skipped. Actually, I'm sorry, School Department, Article 15 for 100,000. No, it's not, no, I'm sorry, not, Article 15 is for 7705. So Article 15, I'll entertain a motion to approve Article 15 for $77,705 for the School Department activity bus. We have a motion.
That's their leases.
Yeah.
Make the motion.
I have a motion from Lori or from Sheila?
Sheila, sorry, I'm late.
No problem. Motion from Sheila, a second from
Second.
Lori. Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Another aye from Bill, okay. So Article 15 is all set. Article 16 is School Department lease for the dump truck and plow, final lease payment of $11,026. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Sheila makes a motion to approve $11,026. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Go.
Aye.
This is actually kind of funny, actually. This is my screen for Bill, so everybody can see. If you can see, there's a whole bunch of eyes. There you go. All right. Article 17, various 7D transit van leases, $57,416. I'll entertain a motion on Article 17 for $57,416 for the school department.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion to approve $57,416.
Second.
And I have a second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. And then Article 18 is School Department new lease 270 transit vans, 12,600 from undesignated fund balance. Do I have a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve. Anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve, and I have a
Second.
second from Sheila. We're going to do, we'll reverse Lori and Sheila, okay? All in favor?
Sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Article 18 is approved. Okay, we have two down the bottom that are non-financial. We had two from the treasurer, Article 45 and 46. Article
Right.
46 I have down as a hold. Is there anything more to that? Biz?
Doug, can you speak to that? I don't have the articles in front of me.
Yeah.
Can you read me what it says, John or Doug?
I was
think
not
I
given
know.
any detail on what it was. It was just that there was two articles being submitted by the treasurer.
So
That's why
I
I'm
think
not speaking up.
45,
Have my copy.
His use of unexpended bond proceeds.
Oh,
For
yeah,
45?
okay. Yep, I'm sorry. We're going to use unexpended bond proceeds in the amount of 901,000, I believe, and that is to go to the school building project. We need to allocate this funding to the new school building project in order to use it for the project.
Is that Article 45 or Article 46?
Doug,
45.
okay.
45.
Yeah.
That's 45. 45 was already voted and approved,
Okay,
Yes.
great.
according
And
to my
then
notes.
the next one
Yep.
for the treasurer is to allow us to use bond premiums to offset the cost of the bonds, and to also, any bond premium remaining can be used to reduce the debt.
Was there a dollar amount assigned to that one?
There is no dollar amount. It's a technicality issue that we should have voted in December. So we're doing a housekeeping article to make sure we have everything in place with the bonding for the new school.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve Article 46 regarding bond premiums being used to offset what?
It's being used to offset the cost of the borrowing, and any remaining funds can be used to offset the cost of the debt.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
I have a motion from Sheila,
Second.
second from Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's a vote. Okay, the special town meeting. I have a hold on Article 3 for the Health Department, recycling road repair phase 1. What's the status on that?
So that is a go. I think that was one that the way it was showed on the prior capital plan, it was a larger.
Was it 205, I think, and we,
But we're doing it in phases. So
right,
they did split it out to show the
it
phase.
is on there. I can't remember the exact amount.
Is 50,000?
Yep.
Right. So if you scroll down toward health on the bottom, keep going down, you'll see Board of Health phase 1 and phase 2 right there.
That was
So
51,000.
There's no change to what I talked about at the last meeting. Again, and we'll talk in a minute about what's happening with the economy right now and where we think the budget's actually going to go. But all the numbers we're looking at now are based on, prior coronavirus, affecting the economy. So in order to balance the budget, instead of doing the full road project, we're just splitting it up into phases. And I think you guys just wanted to see the actual phase 1 shown on the capital plan.
Yeah, we put the balance in phase 2 in 2022.
Right.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve special town meeting Article 3 for the Health Department, recycling road repair in phase 1, $50,000 from undesignated fund balance.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Okay, I have a motion from Joe. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And thank you to Bill. Okay. That is all set. Article 12 on the special town meeting was the water commissioners to rescind the capital article and transfer balances for 23,313.24. I have that as a hold. Biz, do you have anything different on that, or because I don't show that that was voted?
I can explain that. The capital committee did not vote it because it's not a capital item. It was previously voted, and it didn't meet their criteria. What we're doing is we're taking funding that we already have and reallocating it to their urgent needs right now. The water department is running a little tight right now, so we want to make sure that they closed articles that they didn't need right now so that they could address more urgent items.
Is this the one, Biz, where we felt like it should really be broken up into separate articles? In other words, that we rescind the article to make the money available, and then we assign it and transfer it to another?
Well, what we're doing is we're voting to rescind and to reallocate. And for the legal aspects of it, right now we're voting the funding aspect, and our town meeting warrant is out to John Clifford for legalese to make sure that we have the right wording in each of these articles. But the fundamentals of it being the values, it actually nets to zero. We're taking 200 of open articles, closing them out, and reallocating to new articles. So the net, as you would say, is zero.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you were, I think you were here for it you were here for the special town meeting. If you remember, we rescinded the article for the purchase of the gas station on one article. And then on separate articles, we had separate articles to assign the money that was now available in the general fund to sign.
Right.
So, but under this case, you're doing it all in one article. That's the question.
Right.
It's not,
Right.
Well,
it's not
the reason
a
they're going,
question of whether or not we should do it separate.
Yeah.
okay, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because Biz wasn't at the last meeting, Serena and I were there, and I do remember the question. But I agree with Biz, like for this purpose, for purposes of the Finance Committee voting the numbers, I do think it's appropriate to vote this because of what the numbers are and what the net is. And I am going through all this with John Clifford to figure out what the best way is to vote it. And we'll make sure we do it consistent with the other
Okay.
type of articles. It's more of a legal question, not really a finance question.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I just, if there's, so I'm just raising it so we can go from there. So I'll entertain a motion to approve Article 12, to rescind capital articles, transfer balances. Doesn't say where they're going to, but I understand you went through some of the detail with us.
There is a listing as to where it's going. Some of it, I believe, is to meters and to filters and general maintenance items that they need to keep the operation moving.
Okay. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve Article 12.
I'll make a motion to move Article 12.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Article 12 by Joe,
Second.
second from Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
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 To vote.
Aye.
Article 13, Community Center Maintenance, 73,184. Again, this is a rescind and reallocate.
Correct. And the reason being is some of this money's been outstanding. I believe I have the fiscal year dates in my schedule that go back to, I believe, 2009, where this money has been left over or not used, and they should have been closed prior. And because of the situation with the community center, we want to reallocate that $73,000 so they can take care of basic maintenance items that they're not budgeted for. A good example right now is they are looking at their gas fittings, natural gas fittings, which is a public safety issue, and they need to be repaired and replaced. And we need to have the funding for that. And this is what this type of money should be used for something that comes up. I mean, years ago, one of the articles was for grease traps. I think it was somewhere around $20,000. Well, grease traps aren't being used. So we should be able to reallocate this to fund what they need. And again, it's a net zero effect. We're moving money that was previously appropriated. It's staying within the same thought aspect as far as providing maintenance services to the community center.
So rescind and reallocate 73,184.14, Article 13. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the article.
Okay, Joe, and a second.
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 Okay, we have a second from Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, Bill. All right, from my notes, that is all the articles that we needed to vote.
Perfect.
Can someone, Julie, can you confirm that? I know you're struggling with the whole thing, but I'm in the chat. I get the chat box open. Can you confirm by your notes that we're good for articles in the budget? Okay, Julie also asked a question about abstaining from school department articles. Craig, to make sure we correct the vote, I think you would be abstaining from all the school department articles.
I don't think Craig would have to abstain because it's not a direct benefit to, Jill is the superintendent, but Doug, correct me, does he have to abstain from the votes?
I mean, she's on the school committee, not the superintendent, but we've
Correct.
talked about this before. I mean, this is just my personal opinion, you know, just because your wife is on the school committee, I appreciate the fact you're trying to be extra careful, but I think there's zero conflict of interest. And as Biz noted, there's no, generally a conflict of interest involves with either a real or a perceived financial, you know, benefit. And last I checked, you don't get a big financial benefit from being on the school committee.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but I'm just, the whole question is how, I'm just trying to capture how Craig wants to vote.
Oh, no,
If
I
he
get
wants to
that. I'm
abstain,
just
he
letting
can-
you know, I appreciate it, and whatever Craig wants to do is his business, that's fine. I'm just letting him know, I don't think there's any conflict personally.
I agree.
It's always been the policy in years past where most of those people that are involved or have a relative on a committee or department like that, they abstain. But that's more of a question for John.
All right.
That should be the case.
Okay, so Craig, I couldn't hear whether or not you answered that question or not.
Your mic isn't working.
You got no mic, buddy. Yeah, the headphones aren't working. Hello.
Hello?
Yep,
there you
you're
are.
back.
All right. So if you want to mark me as abstain, that's fine. It doesn't matter either way. I can vote. There is no official conflict, but just to keep it consistent with the way I voted before, I'll abstain as long as we have a quorum.
I was going to say, will that give you the quorum, John, that you're going to need?
Yep. Yeah, no, the abstains won't change that.
Okay.
We just have to have a quorum of the people that are, a majority of the people that are voting. All right, so Julie, does that answer the questions for you? It does. Okay, I'm gonna shake of her head, and you said everything else looks good.
Doug,
Okay.
did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last thing, which is that, you probably all know this, but I'll just say it out loud. You know, I or any of you can never get an ethics opinion on somebody else. So the only way to ever get a real ethics opinion is the individual can call the ethics commission and they can get an opinion about themselves. So if you ever just wanted to clear it up 100%, Craig could just call the ethics commission, get an opinion, we'll give it to him in writing, and then the question's answered.
Yeah, so I did that when I joined the committee, and because my wife isn't paid, there is no financial benefit, so I don't have a direct conflict. It's just the appearance of one, just so that it doesn't look like we're sandbagging it for the school department by me voting yes. So.
And that I'm in the same category.
Yeah.
It would have no impact, but at the same time, it's good to be able to say we didn't vote for it. So, all right. So that I think takes care of the articles in the budget. Biz, was there anything else from a town meeting perspective that you want to talk about before we get to like the current situation?
Well, what I'd like to do right now is to thank the Finance Committee, all its members, for their assistance in helping us through our first budget. We know it's been a challenge, and we appreciate your input and all the work that you've put into it for us and with us. And thank you. And now for the future and town meeting, I'm going to pass it off to Doug.
So thanks, Biz, and thank you all for all your votes and all the work you've done. As I'm sure you guys are too, I'm like really frustrated right now because we've done a ton of work and you guys have done a ton of analysis, and we should be all done right now. And we're obviously not because of everything that's happening. You know, I participate very actively with all the South Shore town managers. In addition to all the state conference calls and everything else, all the town managers communicate every week. And it's shifted from original discussions about what are we doing with our buildings? Are we closing buildings? Are we sending staff home? And as we've migrated through all those decisions, and now we're all essentially closed and working remotely, now all the discussion is around the budget, and every town manager is in the same boat. Everybody's really freaking out because we're concerned about two big things: our revenues, our local receipts, and what's going to happen with state aid. And everybody's really nervous. And all the calls that we're on with the state, you know, with Sean Cronin and the lieutenant governor, everybody keeps peppering them, you know, what are you going to do with state aid? Are you doing 9C cuts? And they're obviously not tipping their hand yet because they're not exactly sure. But I'm worried about the current year, FY20, and I'm really worried about next year, FY21, just to make sure we're balanced and just to make sure that our assumptions for next year are going to actually come true. So like pretty much every other town, we put in, I'm going to call it a spending freeze. I say that loosely because obviously we're still making payroll, which is our biggest expense. We're still fulfilling all our other contractual obligations. So it's not like we've literally frozen all our spending, but any discretionary spending, anything that we can put off, anything that we can avoid doing, we are putting off because we're really worried about our local receipts and all of our revenues coming in at the end of the year, coming in short, whether it's rooms tax, meals tax, you know, property tax, excise tax, you name it. So that's what we're doing, you know, probably now more than ever. Our data and our tracking, our numbers and our revenues has never been more important. So Biz is working hard with, you know, with John Ellard and Judy Hartigan to make sure that we're on top of our revenues and we can adjust expenses to the extent we're able accordingly. You know, we'll definitely figure out FY20. You know, we have some money left over in free cash. You know, we're done, knock on wood, you know, with snow and ice. We set a little bit aside in reserve. So I feel like we'll be able to figure FY20 out. FY21 is going to be a whole nother ball of wax. I think we're going to have to take a little bit of time right now over these next few weeks, maybe month or so, to really just look at how our revenues actually come in and look at what the state is doing. I just want to throw out there that, you know, I think we should have all our tools open for consideration. And when I say all our tools, I think we need to look at possibly deferring some capital spending, using more free cash. I think we'll need to look at possible reserve fund spending and even some potentially significant stabilization fund spending. I know we want to build up our stabilization fund as much as possible, but if there was ever an unforeseen emergency crisis, you know, this is it. You know, I don't think anyone in our generation has seen an economic crisis like what's unfolding before us right now. I really want to avoid layoffs, and I think every town around us wants to avoid layoffs. And I think the only way we're going to have to do it is by cutting back on spending that we're able and looking at other sources of funding like the stabilization fund. And I should also highlight that throughout this whole pandemic, we're working very closely, you know, with Biz and Deli and the fire chief to track all of our potentially eligible expenses through the feds, going down through MEMA. There will hopefully be some significant funding available that they'll reimburse up to 75% of eligible expenses. So things like the reserve fund transfer you guys approved at a prior meeting for $20,000 for that Aeroclave sanitizing unit, that'll be like top of the list of something we put in for reimbursement from the feds. And that was a great decision because we've already been using that device a number of times. So we are going to go after all the reimbursement that we can. We've been listening in on all the calls from the state. You know, they've been focusing the state action on legislation to enable us to postpone local elections which the Board of Selectmen just voted to postpone last night. Now there's other bills pending that's going to affect town meeting and budgets. I should highlight that the Board of Selectmen also postponed town meeting last night. I'm tentatively asking everyone to kind of pencil in June 22nd. The board did not vote that date, but that's a date that I'm looking at partly because it's late in June. I'd like to be able to do it before the end of the fiscal year. And another town, East Bridgewater, also uses John Clifford as their town council, and we want to make sure that we're able to have John at our town meetings. They're looking at June 15th, so I think it's good that we look at the following Monday, June 22nd. One of the big pieces of legislation that's pending right now with the governor has a number of articles, or a number of items in it that would affect how we'd handle things, and I thought I'd just mention a few of them. One would allow towns to delay their annual town meeting to be past June 30th. So we would adopt the 1/12 budgets, until we have town meetings sometime after June 30th. I think if it's safe from a public health perspective to have it before June 30th, it'd be a lot better to do it, but they're looking at potentially allowing that.
Doug, I don't want to interrupt you, Doug, but if we do a 1/12 budget, what's the finance committee's requirement?
Yeah,
What's
so
our responsibility under
my
that?
understanding, it's the way it's looking, it would be a Board of Selectmen vote. But again, this is all just pending bills, but I believe it would be a Board of Selectmen vote. Just general flexibility in delaying town meetings with the monthly budgets I talked about. They're also looking at ways that will allow us to use available free cash after June 30th, but prior to when our following year's new free cash amounts would be certified. So that's something a little different. Any deficits that we could realize as a result of the pandemic, they'd allow us to amortize over 3 years, which I think they've done with other types of emergency declarations in the past. They'd allow us to continue authorizing revolving funds, even if town meeting is delayed until after July 1st, which normally you can't do. And there's also talk of either extending due dates to pay property or excise tax bills, or potentially even waiving penalties or interest. Our whole financial team has been talking about that internally. Biz, John Ellard, Judy, and Deb have all been talking about that. And at the selectmen's meeting last night, they spoke about essentially not recommending that. It's a really hard thing to talk about because many in our community are suffering with people getting laid off, businesses closing. So it's a hard thing to have to talk about. We want to be able to provide relief, but on the other hand, as you guys know, that's only going to dig our hole even deeper. And we're a public entity and we rely on public funding. So we're trying to make things easy for taxpayers, with online bill pay and allowing payments to be dropped off in the box, but that obviously only works if people are able to afford their tax bills. The board did not take a vote on that last night. They're waiting to see what the actual legislation is that's signed by the governor that wouldn't require this, it would just authorize it. But again, the staff recommendation is to recommend no based on what's been pending thus far. The flip side to that, I should mention, there's one potential financial article, and it's kind of related to this, that might be a new addition to a town meeting warrant, is something the Assistant Town Administrator, Jen Constable, is pursuing. She mentioned this to the board last night to see if they're interested in the concept before she took it further, and they are, which is one, allowable use of Community Preservation Act funds is for affordable housing. So given the economic crisis that so many people are facing now, some communities are looking at using some portion of the affordable housing allotment within the Community Preservation Act to allow subsidies to lower income renters to be able to help them continue to pay their rent. So it would not be for homeowners, it would be for low income people to be able to stay in their apartments temporarily to be able to make their rent, which would also obviously help the landlords. So that's something just very broadly, conceptually, the board said that's a good idea. Let's look into it further. Jen's going to do some more work on that. The Community Preservation Act Committee, they're going to meet and discuss, more of the details and flesh that out. So if we get to the point where we actually have an actual project, that will certainly come before you as it has a financial impact. So really, I guess my big thing is I'm sort of hitting the panic button a little bit here. We're monitoring the data. We're trying to control our spending, and we're going to have to reevaluate all our revenue assumptions for FY21, both locally as well as from the state level. And hopefully we'll be able to make it work with our reserve funds and stabilization funds, and hopefully the state will do the same and dip into their rainy day fund and not hurt communities by cutting back. I don't know, Biz, if you want to add anything more, but that's kind of the big picture from my perspective.
That is the big picture, and as Doug said, we're going to be evaluating this as we go forward. Now, if we do have modifications to the budget, Doug will be working closely with the Board of Selectmen, department heads, and of course the Finance Committee, because you do have a stake in this. So if we have to redo our budgets, you'll certainly be informed, and we'll come up with the strategy for that. Otherwise, we're proceeding as though everything is fine pre-COVID-19, and we're going to just push forward, and we're all going to wish for the best, not just for the community, but for all of our families and friends as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks very much for the update there. You mentioned, Doug, the whole, potential article that the assistant town administrator is working on. Do we have any sense for how big the pool is of renters in town?
To be honest, I don't have any details on it. Relatively speaking, I would say it's a lot more than the town I came from. There's a lot more multifamily dwellings and multi-story apartment buildings in town. So I think, relatively speaking, it could be significant, but I don't have any numbers yet. And the 10% set aside, I believe, Biz can correct me, is around $87,000 in the 10% set aside for affordable housing. We could obviously also use some of the remaining balance after we factor in the other projects that we're looking to fund. I guess my point is, we're not looking at huge numbers as we talk about things. We're not talking about millions of dollars here. We're talking about a relatively limited amount to provide some relatively limited relief for those in need. But Jen can certainly come back when she fleshes it out a little bit more with more details.
Based on a conversation with Jen, they're looking at roughly $75,000 to try and appropriate. One of the important things to note is this will not be administered by the town should this actually go through. By law, we have to have an administrator, and right now it would be, what are they, the Coalition for Housing or something, Doug?
COG, Wayne Dara and Christine Sullivan, who manage the CDBG program for the town, that they would manage this for us because it's right in their wheelhouse, so they can do it much more efficiently than we'd be able to do. We don't really have the capacity to handle this.
Right. And there are very strict guidelines, so that so we would have to follow everything through the CPC guidelines, and hope we can do the best for the community.
Is there anything that just speaking of the people that need things, is there anything that, have we checked in with the veterans agent, and is there anything that the veterans need specifically if we evaluate their needs?
We keep in close contact with Vinny, and I know he was just recently up in Foxborough filling up his vehicle with meals to donate. I have another Zoom staff meeting with him tomorrow. I'll certainly be checking in again, but unless Biz has heard something different from me, there's no specific financial request that he has for us right now.
Right now, there are specific items that we have to meet per the Chapter 115. And we do have funding to cover this, and there is supposed to be a reimbursement aspect if need be. Vinny hasn't gone there yet, but if he does, the town will be prepared to assist in this matter based on what he has available in his budget. And with the Chapter 115, we'll get reimbursed 75%. But the veterans are people who, once again, like others, are in serious need of assistance. So I think from a town standpoint, that is something we will definitely address and stay on top of.
Right. All right, well, obviously lots more to go with that. Any other questions for
Can I
Doug?
mention one more thing? I'm sorry to interrupt. There's one other potential item that we could add to the warrant. One thing Gino's looking to do is to upgrade our VoIP, the Voice over Internet Protocol phone system, and he is working on a potential solution that may have essentially no increase to the budget, because it would be just, I won't get into the details, but it's essentially, you know, kind of swapping out with a better system that would really be lower cost. But there's a quirk to the whole Municipal Modernization Act, which anytime there's a lease purchase, which results, you know, in a purchase at the end, even if the purchase is, you know, no cost, that has to be voted at town meeting. So even though there won't be an incremental, there might not be an incremental increase to the budget, there might be an additional warrant article for that. So that's just something we're working on, and, you know, we'll bring that back when we're ready. So I just wanted to tip you off to it.
Okay. So with that, any other further questions for Biz or for Doug? Okay.
Yeah, I had one. On my annual town meeting list of articles, I didn't have that we voted Article 4, the accountant authorized revolving funds.
I had that as voted.
We did vote it? Okay.
I
That's
had that
just
as
my
voted,
bad
but no,
Alright.
it's good for you to bring that up. Julie, are
Okay.
we good to go with that Article 4? Do you find it in your notes? We got a thumbs up
Thank
from
you.
Julie.
Yeah,
Second
okay.
voter.
Just double checking. Thank you.
That's exactly what I want everybody to do. If you feel like your notes doesn't match up, let us know.
Yep.
All
Cool.
right. All right. Anything else for those folks? Okay. Let me just look at briefly, Doug, unless you'd recommend otherwise, I'm not sure we need to meet again in April unless you tell me that we do. Or
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, why don't you hold off, and as soon as Biz and I get to a point where we think there's something you guys need to meet and talk about, I'll immediately let you know so you can post it. But I don't have anything for your next agenda yet. We just need more information.
Okay, so we'll go with May 4th for our next meeting. If everybody's in agreement with that, that was supposed to be our town meeting anyway. So I figure that'll kind of fold into the schedule that we're already prepared for. And the last thing I would say is, Julie, I know we have some meeting notes to review, but if you have those in a document that can be forwarded around to everyone, we can forward those around, and then on the May 4th meeting, we'll definitely review meeting notes and get those approved and up to the town. Is that good? We got 4 weeks. 4 weeks. Plus today. Okay. All right. So, hey, 5 weeks worth of notes, we can handle it. Without having that, you know, at our fingertips right now, I don't think it makes sense for us to try and review and approve. But we'll definitely do it on May 4th. If you can forward me the soft copies, I'll distribute it to everybody in email. Okay? All right, we're good. All right, thanks, everyone. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Yep.
Aye, okay. All right, thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Stay
Good night.
healthy.
You too. Good
Yeah,
night.
stay safe.